Hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and in this video what we're going to be doing is applying the paintbrush tool that we used or that we created in the last video. So let's go ahead and find it real quick. So we're going to go to Content, we're going to go to My Stuff, we're going to go to the folder that we created for this particular object or for the material, and we're going to go ahead and grab this material, and if we needed to, and actually let's go ahead and do this. Let's get out of modes, go into select. This way we can actually select the landscape, and remember that we have two landscapes because of the way that we made this, so we may need to reapply this to the other half of the second part of the landscape. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So with the landscape selected, I am going to go into the details panel, and we'll see in there we should have underneath landscape a place where we can add a material, and right now it's rock. So let's grab this new landscape material and actually place it in there, and what we'll see is this thing turn like a shiny black as soon as it loads. Okay, so once that's in there, and that's not very useful, but it is what the material looks like currently. So what we're going to do is we need to go back to the modes, we need to go back to landscape, and now if we go into the paint, what we'll notice is that underneath the landscape we actually have the snow layer, the rock layer, the grass layer, the dirt layer, and the sand layer. So there's our multi-brush or our multi-textured brush tool. There's only one more thing that we need to do though before we can actually start using it, is we need to create a layer for that material to sit on. So even though it's here in the brush, there isn't actually a physical layer out here for it to sit on. So we actually need to create that for it. So when we to do that, we're going to hit the little plus button that's on the back end. That little plus button is going to ask two questions. Whether we want a weighted blend, which is the normal way of using the tool, or whether we want one which is non-weighted. So we do want to do a weighted layer, normal. And once we do this, it's going to ask us, because it is creating something new in the game, so we need to put it somewhere. So we're going to go back to _my stuff, go to the new folder that we created for this, and click OK. And then what we'll see is that we've got a new layer for snow, so it'll be snow layer info, and our landscape has now been turned into snow. So now the snow layer is over everything. So instead of this being rock, it's now snow. So we can see what it looked like before and what it's looking like now. So once this is up, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and create a layer for each one of these, right? So we're going to do the same repetitive thing again. We're going to hit the plus button, weight blend layers, what we're looking for, the normal. Then we're going to click under _my stuff, and then we're going to go into brush 3. Okay, same thing. And you'll notice that these are all coming in with their names because it's taking the name from the layer itself. So my stuff, the correct folder, drop it in there. One for the dirt. My stuff, correct folder, click OK. And finally one for the sand. So weighted normal, _my stuff, brush, or the correct folder, and there we go. Now, so at this point we are able to go ahead and start painting. So let's go ahead and do that because we now have a layer. And the easiest way to think about this is it's like one material with these 5 layers in there. And as we select a layer, and snow would be ridiculous right now because we would not be able to see that. So let's pick grass because that's going to be very obvious against the snow. So let's put it somewhere also close by so we can walk off and get there pretty quick. Okay, so I'm in paint. First of all, I'm in modes, I'm in landscape. Then under the 3 tabs, I'm underneath paint. Then I have paint selected. And then I have grass layer selected underneath paint. And I'm going to go ahead and start painting a little bit. And you're going to see this little bit of a gray checkerboard that comes up. It's actually building the layer. And then as soon as it finishes, we can see the area that we have now painted. So if I want to, I can continue to keep painting this area. Now, as I paint, obviously I have two options up here at the top. There's the brush size and the fall off for the brush. So it's coming in with a lot of edges, and a lot of that is because the brush fall off was at 0. So if I want something that has a slightly smoother edge, I could do that. Okay, so there it is. So now let's just see what some of those other textures look like. So I'm going to put a little bit of rock for the area that's going to be the rocks. Now remember that as you do this, it will create that layer as it's actually physically building the layer itself. And then once that gray goes away, you can start painting normally. Okay, in this case I might make the brush a little bit bigger so I can take up some more area, and then that way I don't have to spend so long painting. So I'm going to do my mountains real quick. Okay, and if we want to, we could go back over with the snow and just hit like the very tops of that, so it looks like the mountain has like snowy mountain tops. And if we go a little bit overboard, we can always go back in, make the brush smaller, and just detail the areas that we want, right? Okay, so now we have some mountains that have got some snow covered tops, like the summits. And we've seen some grass. Let's add some dirt. Again, let me make the brush a little bit bigger. We are going to see that weird, there it is, that gray box. I'm just going to wait for it to build. Wait for the shaders. And then we should end up seeing some dirt. Okay, dirt's coming in kind of patchy because my brush is kind of small. So let me just make the brush a little bit bigger. They were painting with that, and we'll do the same thing with the sand. So again, the sand is coming in on that layer. We wait for the shaders to finish, and then we should see some sand. All right, very cool. So now we have sand. Okay, and you can see that if I go over a layer that's got green or the grass, that now the grass or the dirt has been turned into sand. Now where I would probably use this if I was trying to do something a little bit more realistic would be at the bottom of the river. Maybe coming up the bank a little bit. All right, very cool. So a lot of you, and actually what we'll do real quick is we'll just sort of walk around and see what that what this sort of looks like. So let me push play, and there's our snowy mountaintops. There's sort of our grass. There's the sand. Let's go look at our dirt. Okay, now we are having the same issue as before. We are still getting this sort of repetitive pattern where we can actually see the the texture, the material being repeated over and over and over again. And really what it does is it looks more or less like we drew with a crayon, as opposed to creating something that looks very realistic or getting more of a realistic look out of this. So this might work if we were doing like a Super Mario level. It wouldn't necessarily need to be any more complex than something like this, where you've got the broad paint brushes and the strokes and the colors like this. But if the point is to create a game that's got some more photorealism in it, we'll need to make a couple of changes to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the material itself, double click it, and we're going to go into landscape coordinates. So we're going to select landscape coordinates, and once we select it, we'll see that over here in the details panel we get mapping scale, mapping resolution, mapping U, and mapping vertically. So mapping along the U, which would be forward, backward, V would be left or right, and the rotation would be, so basically what this is going to do is it's going to scale up each one of those to whatever size I put here. So by default, I'm going to use 100. I'm going to put a rotation of 5. So whatever the next time the pattern is created, it will actually be rotated by 5 degrees. And then I made a difference of 1 for the U and 1 for the V. So then that way this will be moved up 1 unit and then over 1 unit. So then that way every time it's created, it will be turned, I believe, anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees around based on this number. So once we've done that, again, remember that we want to hit the apply. Otherwise, any of the changes that we've created will not take place. And we're going to go ahead and hit save. So we'll wait for the compilers here. This might take a little bit longer because I've got more area painted. But once we've done this, we can go ahead and hit stop. And we can go back to our level. And we're just waiting for this to finish compiling the layers. But from what we can already see, we already see something that looks a lot better. The repetitive pattern of this is almost completely gone. You can't even really see the pattern anymore. And we are starting to see a lot more of what looks like more natural terrain from this. So that is a great little, and again, what that was going into this, going into the material that we created, going into landscape coordinates, going into mapping scale. And you can play around with this. Maybe you don't want it to be quite as big as mine was. Maybe you want to knock it back to 75, play it to 50, play it to 25, see what kind of repetitiveness you get. Keep messing around with the rotation, the U or the V, and see what kind of different combinations you get. You might get something kind of interesting. So again, we'll go back. I think the compilers are finished. And wow, look at that. Even in the area that looked flat, remember this whole area was flat. It doesn't have any up and downs on it. Anything where the material itself has actually been pushed up or down, and it actually looks. I mean, here, yes, because here we actually pushed down and up. We used part of the erosion tools there, but that looks pretty amazing. Okay, so cool. The only other thing that I would add to this, well, no, you know what? We'll talk about that in a different tutorial. At this point, we have finished painting. We've finished with the multi-layer brush. We now have a brush that gives us multiple layers that can be used on a landscape to create a very realistic feel to our landscape. And let's just go ahead and push play and walk around. And wow, that looks really, really cool. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.